Hello everybody and welcome back to another episode of Anxiety Chats. Today we have another anonymous story for you and we are joined by the lovely Lisa at Simply Anxious.
Hello, nice to be back.
It's so nice to have Lisa back. She's already done a story with us on the podcast, if you'd like to go listen to that one. And if you would also like to share your anonymous story with us or come on the podcast, then please get in touch because I would love that. And welcome, Lisa.
Thank you. It's really good to be back and to see your lovely face.
Oh, you're such a sunshine person. Lisa, I've been reading your book too. I started reading your book and it's been really helping me. And I've also been putting on Goodreads when I've been reading more pages. So I'm going to
wow.
Yeah, it's cool.
Thank you. I know, I'm the first to admit I'm not J.K. Rowling, but it's from the heart and just what I've learned through my own recovery.
And I think every single story of somebody recovering from anxiety is such a hope for a lot of us that any time I hear a story where somebody's recovered, I grip onto it and devour it because it's like, I'm still not there yet, but there will come a time, I believe, where I will be there.
Absolutely, I will.
Yeah, and that helps a lot, hearing stories like yours. So if anyone would like to get in touch with Lisa or read the book, then we will leave her links everywhere. So on this episode of the podcast, we have another anonymous story. This time it's about this person who had a panic attack for the first time in over a year. So it's a tricky one for this person, but I'll get into reading it and then we can have a wee chat. My anxiety levels haven't been too bad recently, and I'm so proud of that. So when this panic attack started, I just thought, maybe I just exaggerated my symptoms. I've cut out caffeine and now I go running, which helps me a lot. Today I was walking in the school hall and out of nowhere I just get all panicky. So I dashed to the bathroom and at first I was thinking, shit, I'm a goner. This is it. I'm gonna die. I shut my eyes and I focused on anything but my breathing. I thought about other classes I had, the weather, to try and calm myself down, but it wasn't working. So I just counted to 10 and told myself out loud in the bathroom, it's okay, through laboured breaths. I unlocked the stall door shakily, washed my face, and after this, the attack lasted about 10 minutes. I felt really tired, but went for a walk down the hallway and went to my class. I had managed to calm myself down alone and really focused on calming myself down, and I'm so proud of that. Hey, that's actually a really nice story.
It's amazing. It's amazing. And what I love about that story is their recognition of how well they did, because anxiety is not easy. Panic attacks are not easy. And I remember hearing Tyson Fury, who's like heavyweight world champion, say that when he first had a panic attack, it floored him. This is like Mr. Brave. And it's true because it is powerful. But if you think about it, the threat response, which is what anxiety is, but the panic attack is where it just comes on like really forceful. It's being released because it thinks you're in danger. So it's like, it's not going to be like a little gentle tap on the shoulder to say, hey, are you okay? It kind of like hits you to get your attention, to move you out of the way. But I love what that person said about how proud I am of myself, because that is massive and something that we don't do. What we tend to do after a panic attack is, why did I have it? This is awful. What if I get it again? I can't. But what that person has done is recognise how they self-soothed, how they sort of helped themselves through it, rather than adding to it with a secondary fear and exaggerating it and encouraging it to linger.
Totally. I think I actually was today up at Asda, somewhere that I don't usually go because it's quite far from me, but I was like, I'm going to go. I went and I had the thought of, oh God, what have I done? I'm too far away. All those thoughts. And would you call that first fear or second fear?
Oh my God, what have I done is a secondary fear. First fear is anxiety is triggered by maybe you've been, for an example, maybe you've been burning the candle at both ends, you're tired, you're not sleeping properly, something's happening that is not, or you could be over worrying about something.
Right.
But not about anxiety.
Okay.
Something real, if you like.
Yeah.
It's affecting you and your body's picking up on it and it triggers. The secondary fear then is, oh my God, why do I feel like this? Oh no, what if I, all those what if I's is always the front of a secondary fear.
Cool. Because those are the thoughts that started happening, and I was like, okay, cool. I'm still going to walk into Asda and do my whole shop. So I did that, and it was kind of like what this person was saying was like, I almost was the observer of the thoughts. I was like, those are those thoughts again, but that's okay. Went in, got all my salad stuff, got my chocolate fingers, got everything I needed, and then stood in the queue, waited, all that kind of stuff. And it's kind of what this person's saying, rather than this person could have decided, right, that's it, I'm going home, I'm not going back, I'm not going to the next class, It's too much. But they decided, right. And like they said, it only lasted 10 minutes. Right, I'm going to go to the bathroom, I'm going to sit there, and then I'm going to splash water on my face, and it will end. And I just think that's amazing.
I think that's amazing. And I've just picked up on what you said then. See, we have stories and we've associated things with anxiety, along with associating that anxiety is bad, it'll hurt us, it'll harm us. So those stories are, I'm not a brain expert, and I'm not a therapist, but I learned myself that they're not just things that they haven't just appeared. Those stories are like ingrained. So the fear of anxiety and the fear of having a panic attack in a supermarket or a fear of having a panic attack or feeling anxious in front of people will be deeply ingrained in those neuro pathways. When you start recovering, the reason we say you can't think yourself out of anxiety is because you can only form a new pathway by actually showing the brain that you're doing something else. So it gives the brain something else to think about, and it starts a new pathway. So that takes time. So you might go periods of, months or even a year. And there may be a little segments of that old neuro pathway. So what I used to do was, if I felt anxious for like a year and it came up, I didn't always think like this, mind, but I'd think, wow, there's a bit of a segment left of that old story. Because that's what it is. It's just a story. That's good, because now I can process that by doing it anyway. By going and carrying on to what I was doing anyway. Because before, I'd think, I haven't been anxious for ages. And then I'd walk in somewhere that might rattle my stuff being my story, the little dregs of my story that were left. And I'd feel anxious, and I go, oh my God, no, it's come back, that's it, or everything that I've done up to now isn't worth it, it's not worked, I'm going to be stuck like this forever. That's your secondary fear. Boom. So rather than the first example I gave is an empowering one, you may feel the discomfort is horrible, I know, but you've got to remember it can't harm you and it will pass. Or you can fall down the rabbit hole of doom, which loves to try and pull you down and grab hold of that secondary fear, which will then start strengthening that old story again.
Yeah. It makes total sense, and it's very relieving to know that that's such a good way of looking at it, rather than being like, oh God, like this person described. They literally said, shit, I'm a goner, this is it, I'm going to die, which is, both of us have been in that situation and been like, and thought those exact things. But it's nice to know that it's kind of like, actually your brain is really, genuinely, scientifically making new pathways, because it makes sense that when you go somewhere where you've had a panic attack, you're going to probably feel those feelings again. That's normal. But it's about being like, oh, this is a normal feeling for me to have, but still not in danger. I'm working. What did you say? You said, there's a bit of the segment left.
And that's what I do. And even sometimes now I might get a wave of, like that feeling of anxiety for some reason. And I'm a bit like that now. I'm like, wow, this is another opportunity to get some more of it out. Because Michael Singer, who wrote The Untethered Soul, who I know he's eccentric, but I love him. I love the way he explains things. He says that we carry around stuff. And what he means by that stuff is our stories and, all these things that weigh heavily on us. And I really resonate with that with regards to anxiety, suffering with anxiety, because what I went through that caused the anxiety, even though I know growing up there were things that attached that were pushing me into the path that I would eventually get anxiety. That stuff, when it gets rattled, it's going to react. So the stories I was telling myself was keeping my anxiety locked in that cycle. I was never giving it an opportunity to behave in a different way. I was never giving my brain anything different to think about. All my head was, I can't do this. I'm damaged. This is awful. I'm never going to be able to do this. So that's all that my head was full with. And just going back on the Michael Singer thing. So when you're recovering, you've got that deep neuro pathway that's telling you everything's awful, anxiety's bad, and you're trying to override that by doing actions that will create a new pathway, a new, more empowering pathway, a realistic one where these are perceived threats. It's not going to hurt me. And he said, we've got like a splinter. See it as a splinter. And the skin grows over it. So we've been recovering and the skin's grown over it. And we think, God, it's great, that. Doesn't matter. And it feels fine until someone knocks it. And then you think, oh my God, that splinter's still there. That's exactly the same as our stuff, our story. So we might have been non-anxious for months, years, but then something will rattle your stuff, little bits of that story that are still left, and you'll feel it. So I got into the habit of, wow, that's some of my stuff that I want out. So it's an opportunity for me to embed and practice, cement what I've learned and move through it, rather than do the opposite and start growing it again.
And when you say like, oh, this is some of my stuff that I want out, do you feel like to get it out, you need to experience those feelings and symptoms?
Yeah, because I think I said before on your podcast, it's like trying to learn to swim without getting in the water. If you're never going to feel that anxiety and allow it, most of us have never felt anxiety without our resistance on top of it. If you feel it without resistance and you just say, like Dr. Claire Week says, just float through it. Just let it rise and fall and run its course. It feels completely different to when you're struggling with it. And yeah, it feels discomfort, but I'll tell you what, it goes much quicker when you do that because there's no resistance. So it's not gaining power trying to push against our resistance, and we're not getting exhausted by trying to push it away.
Yeah, it makes complete sense, and it's actually that's what kind of happened with me. Is I started getting to the point where I felt like, oh, I'm actually fine, and I can get in the car and I can go uptown and blah blah blah. But then I had one day a really awful panic attack in the car, and because I wasn't actually recovering necessarily, I was masking and
White
knuckling, pretending everything was fine. I was distracting myself. I would have things to do in the car, so I couldn't think about anxiety, rather than being like, okay, I'm experiencing anxiety. This feels horrible, but it's not dangerous. It sounds like, it's really tempting to do the first one. It's what I did for years, was like, just distract your way through it, because then you can't think about it. But that doesn't have the long-term effects and benefits of it. And that's why this person's story is really amazing, that they actually sat with it, because distractions and stuff, and they also said they cut out caffeine and they go running, which are two things that are also adding pieces to the puzzle, isn't it? Like, that's something that you are a massive advocate of, is it's not just about the panic attacks, the anxiety, the agoraphobia. It's about you as a whole. What makes you happy? Have you rested enough? Even things like, have you been to the toilet? Like, I often feel when I haven't been to the toilet, I might be more anxious. Asking yourself, have I been to the toilet recently? Maybe it's a bit gross, but I need to ask myself that.
And that's understandable, because the gut and the brain are linked. And it's funny, because if you're ever struggling to go to the toilet, so like whether it's diarrhea or constipation, I don't know. I've had constipation where I've been sat on the loo. Sorry, guys, but we all do it. Even the Queen used to. You can feel like the body's in distress a bit. It feels a little bit like anxiety. Or if you're out and you're trying to hold one in, it's because it's linked. The body's telling you something. And I remember I did it myself, where I felt great, I felt okay, and then the anxiety came back with a vengeance. But when I was being honest with myself, I'd started caning the booze again and not sleeping properly and getting up for work with a hangover and then going into my body was saying, we can't sustain this.
Yeah.
This is not good for you.
It's like putting a plaster over like a broken leg or something. Do you know what I mean? It's like it can fix the problem short term for a little bit. It can feel like it's getting better, and it's so tempting to do that because it's so awful. You want a quick fix, but there isn't a quick fix, unfortunately. And it doesn't mean you can't get better, but it means it won't happen quickly if you want like the best results.
I think one of the reasons it doesn't happen quickly is because we're resisting, which doesn't help. And, I say this, and I actually had this realization. I thought, right, okay, I'm sat here day in, day out thinking, why am I anxious? I can't do this, I can't do that. Trying to think my way out of anxiety, trying to keep one foot in front of it, trying to just work it out and fix it. And then I thought, okay, if I had a broken leg, I wouldn't put a 25 kilogram backpack on my back and start running around the garden in it. But I'm putting a 25 or more kilogram weight of worry on my already exhausted, anxious mind. So of course I'm not. And that's when I got into get the anxiety levels down by self-soothing, by decluttering the stress from my life. And then once those levels start dropping, then I can focus on, okay, let's start working towards recovery. Let's start practicing gradually doing different things to how I respond. And what that person has done in that letter, every single bit of it was brilliant. I think apart from the initial shit, I'm a goner, but we can excuse ourselves for that because that response is intense. And if she hasn't been, or if they haven't been anxious for like a year, it is a shock to the system. So, I think they did a brilliant job. And maintaining that is to maintain that and to benefit from that experience, because that was a really good, I always try and say the gift is in the shit. The gift in that experience was how well I managed that. And, you know, when did you have it? 6 years ago. Forget it. Leave it. It's gone.
So, and like especially like you said, like not having a panic attack in over a year, so not kind of being used to those symptoms and then them coming back. It could have been an opportunity, like a point that person was like, oh my God, it's been a whole year and it's come back. And, you know, it could have easily gone into that, but they were like, they held it together and they shut their eyes, they focused on something else, they were breathing, they all the right things. And at the end, they were proud of themselves and they went to their next class. It's just...
Honestly, and this is how I think we all would love us to realise that that's how you do it. We don't have to pile concern onto it. We don't have to analyse why we felt like it, why we just know that it will pass and we can move through this, and we'll feel tired after, because that's what adrenaline affects the body like that, makes you feel tired. But we're okay. And the thing is, I was the person as well, but I meet people who have panic attacks all day. It's awful. I've been there. And they say, God, I wish I was strong and I wish I was able to cope. And I'm like, yeah, but you are strong. You're having panic attacks every day and you're here now talking to me. That to me demonstrates you are strong. You are able to cope because you are coping. So change that mindset, shift that mindset into, at the moment, I'm really sensitized. I'm getting loads of panic attacks, but I am strong. I can cope with it. It won't always be like this. So instead of fighting it, I'm going to focus on self-soothing and cutting out the crap in my life that will help me get through this period quicker. And that's it. Rather than I'm damaged and labelling ourselves and all the things that I did.
Definitely. And yeah, I'd say I'm half in that, half out of it. Which is also a better place to be than fully in it. You know, and I imagine lots of people listening are maybe half in, half out, and that's okay. And one day we can all be like Lisa and be recovered and be walking our lovely dogs in the forest.
I still think there are parts of me that, and I actually don't blame it on anxiety now, but like what we were talking about before we went live, if you like, about the whole being single thing. I think there's still stories inside me from my upbringing and from experiences that I kind of feel safer being on my own with my dogs. Now, is that a defence behaviour? Probably. Is it impacting negatively on my life? No. I love my life. It's the first time I actually can say I love my life. I think when I got married, it was because I was 30 and I was expected to get married. You know, it was all things like that. So I actually feel the reason why I'm not anxious is because I'm living me. I'm living in alignment with what makes me happy. And it's not very glamorous, but it's great.
Totally. And it's also a good question to ask yourselves, though, is when you're anxious about doing something, is it because maybe you don't want to do it? Is it like a family gathering where you know that people aren't going to be very nice? Or is it, X, Y, and Z? That's an important question to ask yourself, actually.
I say that to people who say to me, oh, I just can't drive on the motorway. I just can't, I don't enjoy it. I hate it. And I get anxious and I'm like, I don't like the motorway. It makes me feel anxious. Actually my knuckles go white as I'm driving because of the lorries and stuff. I just don't like it. Maybe you just don't like driving on the motorway, and that's okay. you know, but I think we're conditioned to think, well, you're meant to love driving on the motorway. You know, this belief that if we don't skip along happily enjoying everything, then there's something wrong with us, where actually that's not true.
Totally. And also, if there's ways to avoid driving on the motorway, do it. You know, it's like, we don't have to, we need to pick our battles. And obviously, if you're at a point where you can't leave the house and stuff like that, then maybe it's important that you find ways that you can start to recover. Easier said than done, of course. But, you know, we've been through a life of anxiety, you and I think it's okay to let ourselves off sometimes and say, well, actually, if I don't want to go to that gathering of people who I don't actually like, why am I going to do it? Or if I don't want to drive on the motorway and I'm able to get through it through other roads, I'm not gonna.
Yeah. Don't put so much pressure on you, because it's like, God, it starts weighing you down. And then obviously your inner self is going to start suffering. So just focus on what you can do and not what you can't control. And what you can do is recognize that you have a choice. It's okay to say, actually, I don't want to go down the pub with all you lot because it's not my thing. And that's okay. It's not being rude. It's just being honest to yourself.
100%. And thank you so much, Lisa, because you are honestly just so helpful. And it's just like so great talking to you. It really, really helps a lot. And I know it'll help other people that are listening. So I really just appreciate everything you do online and for coming on the podcast again, because you're just great.
I love this podcast. I think you're wonderful. And I love the person who wrote that letter, because sharing stuff like that is what helps others. And we all need to stick together.
100%. We've got a quiet little community. Like we're all, I sometimes I'm walking on the street, like if I see somebody wearing headphones or something, I'm like, I wonder if you're also listening to Claire Weeks, or I wonder if you're also listening to, like, do you know what I mean? I'm like, I don't know, there's lots of us out there, and like you said, we all need to stick together. And thank you to the person that wrote this in. It's like Lisa said, it's a really beautiful story, and I really appreciate that. And for everyone listening, thank you so much for listening, and we will see you very soon. Goodbye, everybody.
Bye.